would you like to go first?
Yes. So I'm Alex Vinas. I work for CowSwap, and I do marketing and communications there. And as you know, CowSwap is the best DEX exchange to trade with MEV protection. So if you haven't tried it out, make sure you do at cowswap.exchange.
Yeah, I'm Julien Bouteloup. I'm involved in a few different projects. Curve Finance, mental market maker. Stake DAO, decentralized exchange for strategies. Rect, .news, deep investigations, yeah. And Stake Capital, which is quantitative algorithmic trading firm in investment. Yeah.
Cool.
And Blackpool. I have the two.
Well, thanks a lot, guys, for being here. And we're going to be chatting about DeFi, surfing the highs and lows. So the first question here is, obviously in 2021, there was DeFi summer, right? Or was that 2020, actually? 2020, yeah, missed a year. There was DeFi summer, and now NFTs have kind of really taken the limelight. So what do you think is next for DeFi, and kind of how to get that limelight back?
I mean, I think in general, DeFi, I think crypto markets in general are very narrative driven. At different moments, there's a different narrative that kind of catches on and kind of becomes the pervasive story that you know, catches everyone's attention and leads to certain sectors of the market really taking off. So DeFi Summer is a great example. I think DeFi Summer was a moment where, for the first time, a lot of people realized, like, you know, there's a lot of value here, and there's, you know, this thing is going to be the future financial system, and protocols are, yeah, not only promising conceptually, but they're actually generating significant revenues to show for it. So, and you know, you've seen that happen with metaverse assets towards the end of last year. NFTs have been on an amazing run, and I mean, it's hard to predict like where the narrative kind of finds itself. I think it's an organic process that, you know, maybe can be driven intentionally by certain people who are really good at building narratives, but at the end of the day, it's the market that has to agree and kind of go along for the ride.
I think, for example, like if you look at Rect.news, we're seeing an emerging activity on the bridging, like cross layers, and the fact that multiple different chains will operate between each other. And what I believe this year, what we see more and more is like real financial products coming from traditional finance, but like sophisticated financial products. What we've seen so far in DeFi are they're not really, I mean, they're good, but not so rocket science in the sense that, okay, auto market maker is the fact of automating market making, but you still have a lot of different financial products like bonds, like swaps, and all the different things that are very complex that will appear in the decentralized finance. The reason for that is because the market is getting more mature, and the products and features are easily, you can easily build those products, and that's the reason why we'll see more and more complex product coming in DeFi, but stuff that actually doesn't exist in traditional finance. And I think we'll see like new product, new ideas that they were not able to happen in a financial market.
Yes, so touching on what Jeremy said, I think because we know that the two narratives that have worked so far are the DeFi Summer and the kind of NFTs, and also adding on what Julien said, in my opinion, the next thing we'll see is the marriage between NFTs and DeFi, which in essence allow like the sophistication of financial products, because I feel like there is nothing better than one NFT to actually trade on a specific financial product. Like this will allow like to different like exchange venues to trade bonds, swaps, derivatives that at this moment in time we kind of have, but they're still very tricky. But if we allow like similar to like LP positions, you know, that people are able to actually like trade the contract itself without actually having to move the capital that is deployed on that position or whatever, it will be like the next thing, in my opinion.
Cool.
If I can follow up, yeah, just I think Julien made a great point about bridging. There's a lot of energy right now around cross-chain bridging. But at the same time, there's a lot of like security immaturity in that space. There's been some the wormhole hack, which I think was the biggest one. There was also an issue with Ronin recently and their bridge. So I think that probably when the market can be convinced that bridges are sufficiently secure, then that will probably be a very strong moment for that narrative to really take off. Yeah.
Do you think that's one of like the big limitations to the industry at the moment, given that there's lots of hacks and stuff that kind of go on, it kind of puts people off? How do you see that as builders in the space?
Well, I mean, I think that that's a big deterrent for a lot of people from using bridges and being more active on cross-chain. That doesn't mean that people aren't still aping in, like they are, but I think that it's definitely, to me, a barrier to kind of, move significant assets like across these bridges that haven't proven to be like totally secure yet.
I'm actually the opposite. I don't think it actually stopped people from using bridges. We've seen it across many different projects. People are not scared of using bridges because apparently they feel like it's very short. So they don't feel like it's gonna be hacked in the time that they're actually using the bridge, which is very funny. But bridges are not stopping people from crossing assets right now. The vulnerability are attached to those bridges.
For me, I think more than the bridge itself acting as a stopper is more in general the cost of having to transact with the bridge that's stopping people. Because in essence, we have all these new other chains that have been born, like, I don't know, in the past year or past 2 years, that are very cheap, but mainly like the good chunk of the liquidity is still on Ethereum. So therefore, it's still relatively expensive to move one thing, from one chain to another.
Yeah, and also, I guess, the added layer of complexity. Like, I think where DeFi came from, it was pretty complex when it started. And obviously, I don't know where you see kind of the vision of how easy DeFi should be in the future, but do you think we're like almost there of it being really easy to use, or halfway? Kind of where do you think we're on that spectrum at the moment?
Yeah, I think coming back to your first question, I think the idea about DeFi and what we're moving into, and potentially maybe this year, is the fact of using blockchain tokens, NFTs, without actually knowing you're using blockchain, NFTs, or tokens. At the end of the day, you want to use an application without understanding the technical aspect behind this application. It's like every day you use internet without knowing, or you send email without knowing SMTP and all different protocols. And that's exactly what the space is moving into, like what I call layer 3. Layer 3 is very focused on utility, very focused on providing the intrinsic value of the feature. And that's the reason why 2017, that was the ICO boom, people building landing page, raising billions or millions of US dollars. And now, like 2022, you don't see those guys. Because building a landing page and raising a lot of millions is not possible because the space matured. The same with NFTs. NFTs, there was JPEG, simple images, simple designs, raising a lot of money. But now, if you look at the market, OpenSea and all the people doing NFTs, it's now actually difficult to raise money by just building a simple NFTs because the space matured. It will be the same. So now this year, hopefully in a hub, we'll see more and more products, I mean, like Twitter, like application that people are using daily, that will use those technology and the underlying concept of DeFi without the user realizing they're actually using it. And that will be the true DeFi vision.
I strongly agree with that. I think that the protocols that are sort of popular in DeFi today mostly will be more in the background in the future. I don't think that like they really are best served as being like end user facing technologies. I'm definitely speaking from a Balancer perspective. I think Balancer really sees itself acting as this infrastructural piece for DeFi and like not trying to be the ones that develop the best end user experience. We want to be the ones who develop the best hardcore tech behind that, and being the best at providing the tools and the platform for others to take that and to develop on it and to build those applications and those experiences. And I think the future of DeFi is not that like, everyone is going to use Balancer and Curve and Uniswap and CowSwap. I think that like, well, I don't want to speak for CowSwap. CowSwap, maybe everyone is going to use. But
for the music.
But I think more likely, they're going to be indirectly using all these protocols through other applications that are sort of closer to the user.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, realistically speaking, I think we're still like far away from a lot of adoption, but I do think, like Julien and Jeremy, that the next wave is like facilitating this new wave of people to actually use this technology without, I don't want to say without realizing, but without having to realize all the technical details of it. And at least that's what we're trying to work at CowSwap, which in essence is we want to abstract the user from all these complexities of what is the correct gas price for me settling this transaction, what is the current new hot DeFi trading venue for this type of pool. And it all comes tied to this professionalization that we talked in the beginning. Hey, like, you just need to know that you want to trade asset A for asset B. Then let I don't want to say experts, but let the people that actually have business built around this deal with it for you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for sharing. I think that's ultimately where the space is going, right? It's all about banking the unbanked. That's kind of what DeFi was invented for, and Bitcoin at that matter. Then there's kind of this new conversation around permissioned DeFi and the idea of KYC and doing attestations on wallets or even adhering to the sanction lists for DeFi protocols. What are your thoughts on this topic and how that fits into the future of DeFi?
It's definitely a taboo topic, but in my opinion, as long as the people that are forcing more permission DeFi with attestations, which is, I don't know, I guess the normal world, the real world, as long as they accept the fact that those funds are going to be mixed with real anon users' funds, then it's fine. Because if we're all here to truly build an open space for anyone to build whatever, then like even someone that is trying to do like a permission system should be allowed to build it. Yeah. That said, if I think the thing to take care of or to be vigilant is if these permission people push more the narrative and take over the fact that no one can really have like an anon funds, then I hope there is trouble and I hope there's backlash from the community.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's an open space, freedom of building whatever you want. But at the end of the day, for example, Stake Capital, we are a liquidator on Aave, ARC, the liquidity for where you have traditional financial players that provide liquidity, and between each other they can borrow. Well, the thing is, like, if they start playing and start using permission like tools and like such as Aave, ARC, and then in a couple of years, they realize that the rate is lower than if they use permissionless or like Ethereum mainnet and all these different protocols, like where they have access to the entire liquidity worldwide without borders. Well, I think it's still good. It's very good because then they realize that they're missing a huge opportunity. But for them to realize this opportunity, they first need to put a foot inside this space. And I think it's like slowly but surely, traditional market will realize that it's a massive opportunity for them rather than being something that they will lose money. For them, they will make more money, and it's to us to teach them that it's easy to use, it's for good, and obviously you still have some people worldwide that will try to use those tools in a very bad way, but then regulation still need to tap and investigate. But at the end of the day, we'll still all need to play in the same room because it's beneficial for all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the long-term future of DeFi is permissionless. I think that there's an adoption curve for getting there, and I think that permission DeFi can be a useful milestone along the way, or stepping stone along the way. There are a lot of institutions today that are you have your early adopters, you have individuals who jump right into permissionless DeFi, but then you also have others, mainly like large institutions that are highly regulated. They're not ready to fully dive into permissionless DeFi. They kind of need to take a first step. And I don't know how long that will last. I'm not here to like give predictions, but I think that eventually it will lead to sort of a merge into the permissionless world. And I think that like just one other interesting thing that just popped up into my mind on this is okay, so institutions will continue to change as well, right? Like financial system is changing, DeFi is growing, right? So the institutions of today that are structured in the way that they are, that are very limited in the decisions that they can make and the types of investments that they can get involved with, right? They are changing too. There are new types of institutions being born. There are more DeFi native institutions being born. The value of this space is going to grow so much that those institutions will probably be the most successful institutions of the sort of next era that is ahead of us. And those institutions do not have these limitations, right? And they will be using permissionless tools. So I think that like either way that you look at it, that's how I see the future playing out. I think the institutions that can't get involved today will sort of find more avenues to get more directly involved. And I think that also the types of institutions that will be leading the space can look very different in the future.
That's fair. Would you say, like, as builders in the space who have kind of spent a lot of time, obviously, building the products that you're working on, as the audience of Devconnect is ultimately a lot of builders as well, a lot of developers who are looking like, are there any kind of opportunities in this space or problems that you've seen that you either think need to be solved now or future problems that you think might need to be solved? That's a curveball question right there.
Honestly, I think like the question, like, are there opportunities in this space for developers? Like, is a comedic question, you know? Like, because there's like an insane amount of opportunities for developers in this space. Like, not only does every project in need of development help and talent and hunting and competing for it, but if you're more entrepreneurial minded or you know you have an idea that you want to build, I think it's never been easier to access capital to fund your project. There's a lot of demand, a lot of appetite for investing in early stage projects, and I actually got like so caught on this first part of your question that I don't even remember what the rest was.
Are there any problems in particular that you wish could be solved?
I would say making the learning curve faster for people that are wanting to join, because I feel like we've kind of like dried out a lot of new developers that are coming, because mainly like all they hear is just like speculative topics around it. And I feel if there was like an easier learning curve and more topics to divulge around, then maybe like it could work as a bait for more people to like get interested and attracted to the space.
Well, I think the biggest one is the legal framework. That's a no-brainer. How can you, and also like in Europe at the moment, is like how can you operate a DeFi company or build in DeFi space and blockchain space, and not be under a wrecked process. So yeah, I think if Europe it can be like a huge lobby worldwide and for DeFi and blockchain in order for us to build and not think about too much about legal. I think that's the biggest thing that this space can build right now for builders to actually prosper and concentrate on changing the world. And yeah, as mentioned, educations, making tools easy for others to build. I can see like many projects in the room, like StarTurn here, that are building platform and tools that can help builders to facilitate the onboarding from Web 2 to Web 3. Super easy without understanding the concept behind the technology. So just plug and play, drag and drop, like what the space with the Web 2 scene, like from. It was like really difficult to build in Web 2 before, and then you had like CMS, like Drupal and WordPress. Like they look like very bad now today, but before they completely disrupt the space. Well, we need this kind of same tools in Web 3 to make super easy to build applications and change the space.
To build on that a little bit, if you're a Web 2 developer interested,
reach out to me. Web 3.
If you're a Web 2 developer that's looking to transition into Web 3, one thing that's very interesting for you to kind of think about is that imagine if you wanted to build something in sort of Web 2 and you could use Google, you can like build something that sort of leverages some parts of like Google, leverages some parts of Amazon, leverages some parts of Apple, uses like some element of like Netflix technology, like because in Web 3 everything is composable and everything is open source. So when you are a builder, you have so much at your disposal to work with and to build on top of, and what people are building in Web 3 is largely kind of a further construction on top of infrastructure that's been built by other people and built by other teams. There's a lot that's already there for you to get your hands on and to kind of combine and to add some new elements that didn't exist before. You have a completely new application that provides value to users that didn't exist. You did not need to build the whole thing from scratch yourself. You have a lot of code and a lot of battle-tested systems that are available for you to use as a platform.
Yeah, I'm going to move on to the next question, if that's okay. So traditionally, a lot of the DeFi yields has been subsidized by the handing out of governance tokens one way or another. Ultimately, that's not really long-term sustainable. Like, do you think that's going to be, a problem for the DeFi ecosystem, or kind of how do you see that transition away from kind of, grants being given out to more of a sustainable
It's meant to be a temporary mechanism of bootstrapping a community that's one purpose, right? One purpose is, yes, it bootstraps growth, it bootstraps user acquisition, but it also bootstraps the development of a community. A community, in order to exist as a large, diverse community, you need a large, diverse set of token holders. So you need to distribute your token to a lot of people somehow. Right? And one of the ways to do that, and I think that sort of what the space realized was a really good idea, is let's give the tokens to the users who actually want to use what we've built, and use that also as an incentive for them to use it in the way that brings value to the protocol. So that's not meant to happen forever. There's a bootstrapping phase where the token is being distributed. And that is the time where you should expect that to happen, and it's not supposed to happen forever. And it's also supposed to, the whole concept of bootstrapping something is you get it to a place where it's sustainable and it doesn't need that extra incentive, doesn't need that extra push behind it, right? So you're hoping, as a new protocol, that you are using these token incentives to kind of get off the ground and to create enough momentum and traction that genuine organic traction is enough to carry you forward. If you have to continue to rely on incentives, then you know that you've failed to build something that really solves a need.
Yeah, I think that there are two different answers two different aspects to this question. Is like, will inflation of governance token continue in the long term? Yes. Will those governance tokens have a price? Then it's a different question. Because inflation of tokens, as Jeremy mentioned, is a way of rewarding users, and it's the same as traditional finance, even if I don't want to call it, because we're being recorded. Legally, it's a governance token, but in traditional finance, you could see like equity and dividends, and then you distribute, you have equity and then you receive dividends. When in DeFi, you have governance tokens and you receive rewards. It's a way of rewarding people that are using your product. But the problem is, because you have so much competition in the space, because so many people, and we're onboarding more DeFi builders to build projects, then at the end of the day, you will have a lot of inflation, a lot of governance tokens, but only projects that are providing true utility, people will focus on those projects because they will receive rewards, plus they will have utility of using them. It's the same with the NFT market. The NFT market, well, before, for example, gaming. If you think about projects like Axie Infinity and all these different projects, they were paying you to play, without you enjoying the fact of playing, is just because you were playing. I mean, let's call it like what it is. It's like it's a game, but the game was so simple that compared to another game, you could have fun playing it, where here you just play because you were earning money. Well, the space is moving. Now the chance of building those games is over, and people will build, like, for example, Electronic Arts, big players that are investing, Sony, investing billions in the market with Fortnite and all different things. You will have the exact same features as to get paid to play, but also to have fun to play. It's the same with DeFi. Like, for example, CardSwap, Balancer, or Curve, they will slowly disappear under the protocol level, and then you will have projects building on top of them and providing utility and rewarding the user for using their products. And that's what we're actually moving into. So inflation, governance, inflation of tokens will continue, but many, many different projects will disappear for the project to have true utility in providing people value over time for them to use because they're solving a problem in their life.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so I completely agree with both opinions.
Yeah.
Like, I think there is a limit to what we've done with governance tokens in general, and even though they're still going to be continue to with this inflation to be printed, I guess the true turning point is what Julien says. That is when, like, projects start to actually give more value to those tokens that pure governance rights. Like, first case that comes to mind is, like, for example, dividends, no? Like, are you holding this? Are you benefiting this DAO by being like a kind of like a shareholder? Then you maybe why not receiving a dividend? Or even like what we're doing right now at CowSwap, like, for example, are you holding enough tokens to have a different tier of discounts when you're trading? Then sure, then it's like all these different paths that we can find to actually add more value to the token than just pure governance, that this is for stewarding a DAO.
Yeah, value is important. Jeremy, you have to run, so thanks ever so much. Please give a round of applause for Jeremy. Thanks so much for coming. It's been a pleasure. And now we're going to also transition to the audience questions. So if you've already submitted something on Slido, great. If not, please do if you have a question. And upvote the ones that you also want to see answered. And we're just going to start from the top. One of you can answer or both of you can answer. We have another 10 minutes or so. So the first question is, how are protocols preparing to deal with hacks? It's just a very open question.
Well, obviously, at Rect, that news, we've been, who knows Rect? Okay, so there's, yeah. So we've been pretty busy over the past 2 years, year and a half. That's good for business. But, I mean, first thing, obviously, don't rush your deployment. Try to use other piece of code that were fully audited, and so like industry standard. Don't try to be fancy in the code that you're trying to deploy. If you are, get auditings. Also pair programming with other people in the space, like other projects that you're trying to either integrate with or you're trying to build on top of. I mean, working with. So yeah, like be super cautious, because I mean, usually people, I mean, they say like Solidity is complicated. So it is super simple to build or to write a piece of code. But not to get wrecked is a completely different world. So like try to maximize the security over time or complexity of the product you're trying to use. So just baby step. And I think you can put all the chance in your side to not get wrecked. And if you are, you have a nice leaderboard anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, in essence, don't reinvent the wheel, and especially don't rush your code to market. Like, regardless of the timing, it is more beneficial to deploy with your soundness and your secureness than actually rushing it to be on, oh, I'm in Devconnect, now it's going to pump if I release now, and then actually get wrecked and appear on the leaderboard.
Yeah, and how to recognize, because your question was about how to build project not to get exploited, and how to use project to not get exploited. Well, look at the people that have been in the industry for, if they had the chance, for a long time. They've been building a lot of different projects, and they're usually the one that always get criticized for not shipping fast. Well, those guys, it means that, I mean, if they're actually shipping at the end, it means that they actually focus on security. But I deployed, I mean, what's the name? Like I code in prod or whatever, test in prod and all these things. I mean, it's very likely that you get wrecked at the end. So, yeah, like use projects that have been building up, like they have a good track record. They potentially slow to deliver, but it means because they focus on security rather than FOMO or attention. And that's really important because over time, the ones that are providing huge value and they're staying for long term are the ones that will not make you on the leaderboard.
It's a touchy subject, security. A question from earlier, which was...
Yeah, also, yeah, that's a good point. It's not because the project has been audited by a huge firm that it cannot be wrecked, you know, like it's...
Yeah.
Because there's no formal verification and like, it's tough, yeah, it's tough.
So a question from earlier was, if bridges tend to expose vulnerability, as you've mentioned, what are the best solutions for dApps and games to build on ETH that need a high-speed TPS and a cheap gas fee?
Have hope on the merge.
Believe.
I mean, it just depends on, I guess, what your target audience is. Because if your target audience is mainly going to be staying in those type of chains that live around Ethereum, then maybe it's better just to concentrate on not making your users have to bridge money from one place to another. Because in the end, like a bridge is sort of this centralized actor that is holding a lot of funds that sooner or later something can go wrong in very different ways. So, I mean, it depends on how you use a bridge because it's what Julien said earlier. If you use it for short periods of time and you're aware that you're just putting your money in and out, then, I mean, that's maybe the best approach you can do. But it's still hard to try to convince people like not to bridge or not to take things carefully. Because, you know, that's the problem. Like with the price movements so fast, they just want to do it like as soon as possible.
What's the question?
How to get cheap gas fees and high TPS.
I think like, yeah, it's tough. Yeah, okay, I understand now. Well, you have, I mean, I think you have like some good projects that are using, for example, like been using a little bit Starknet, Starkware. It's really good because you don't find yourself isolated. Yeah, that's a tough question. Like because if you choose one chain over another, then you end up being isolated in this chain. So I'm very looking forward what I call layer 3. So the fact that as an application you're using blockchain, but then you have those bridges that are super fast and super cheap to use. So at the end of the day, the user don't actually need to know that he's using one chain over another one. And this will just scale the space to another level because you'll be able to interact with your product, have utility on your product without knowing which chain you're using because those bridges are so fast and so cheap. So then it's yeah.
Yeah.
But for now, it's complicated. Very complicated, yeah, because it takes time or money, and then so you have the speed, but you need to spend.
Yeah, you need to learn it.
$100.
Another question is: will there ever be DeFi on Bitcoin? Will there ever be DeFi on Bitcoin? I think some people are working on that problem.
I mean, technically, with RSK, no, with Rootstock, it's already possible. Then I think you also have the Stacks ecosystem, I think, which is also kind of building. But I guess it depends on what you define as Bitcoin, you know, because a lot of people always say that, especially like a lot of Bitcoin maxis, you know, any Bitcoin that is not on the main chain is not Bitcoin, which to be fair is true. But then it's like if you go down that answer, then we're never going to see DeFi on Bitcoin. If you go down the answer that a token can be wrapped and can be Bitcoin, then I guess we'll see DeFi on Bitcoin soon.
Yeah.
I mean, if you consider Bitcoin as a reserve of value, do you want gold to be on the internet? Well, my point is like Bitcoin is Bitcoin right now. There's a reason why, not a reason, but the fact that you cannot move it, you cannot build legal DeFi on top of it or even DeFi. I think it's good for Bitcoin. Bitcoin, at the end of the day, you want Bitcoin to be accumulated by nation states, by big corporation, and by yourself. And you don't really want to be able to build internet on top of it.
We'll see what happens. So this, I'll take maybe two more questions. What do you think about the new types of models of liquidity? For example, V3.3, tokamak, and PCV. I'm not sure if that means anything to you. It doesn't mean anything to me right now.
For me, I mean, I've heard of tokamak, but I'm not confident enough to actually give an opinion because I haven't researched enough on that topic.
Well, I have an opinion, but I don't really want to mention because then you get all these guys on Twitter attacking you. So, prefer staying. Yeah, I mean VE33, V445566. I mean, I don't know what we're stopping, but it's interesting.
We'll see. So we mentioned permissioned versus permissionless, and obviously the implications it has for AML, anti-money laundering. Like, the question here is, what is your take on anti-money laundering and the new types of law enforcement? I guess also someone from France, with everything that's going on now with the EU, like, what do you really think about the future of this?
It's a tough question. Like, I think we have a lot of people in Europe that are lobbying to make sure that people understand what kind of value can bring them to use blockchain. Also in terms of European as a nation compared to the rest of the world, if you want sovereignty and like all these different concepts. So the idea is not to enforce, not to force them to realize or to use this kind of products, but more to them to fully realize that the potential of this technology. But yeah, with Mika, what we saw lately, that's not a good sign. But I'm sure, like I mean, I'm sure, never sure. But yeah, I hope they will realize that the potential is enormous and it can bring a lot of value to Europe, and also like compete with the US or Asia. So like central bank, like digital currencies, European stablecoin, massive topic.
You know, I think the main push for regulators to actually put anti-money laundering in place is because I guess they're very scared of what's happening in crypto, but I think they're like told the wrong story, because in essence, even though like people tend to think crypto is anonymous, it's not, it's pseudo-anonymous, and it's still completely trackable and very enforceable, and it's just a matter of teaching or educating the right government agencies to actually, in the same way when computers came, you know, things changed, how to track operations, and it's even better than the systems we have now. And then currently it goes more on the question that he said, like, is this more a political debate, you know, what does Europe or any country want to stand up in terms of sovereignty of their citizens? Do they want to push like only CBDC because it's the perfect AML tool, everything control? Or what would they want to trust a little bit more, like, okay, if they actually, a user is capable of doing a proof of attestation or something, like proving that those funds come from illicit sources or whatever case, then like it's valid enough? Then it's a question that we'll see.
Yeah, here in Europe, we definitely have a big fight ahead. So if you can lobby, lobby. Do you guys have any closing comments or anything you wish to share with the audience before we close off? Words of motivation, inspiration?
No, I just think like it's, if you just join this space, well, welcome. It's full of opportunities and focus on building and shipping and providing value back to this space, and the space will reward you in one way or another. And the most important aspect of this space is knowledge. I think it's the biggest school that the world never seen. And the day after day, you're learning and learning after learning. So I think it's a massive opportunity.
Yeah, so don't let the noise distract you and keep on building, because I think the future has a lot of potential and is very bright, and it's a very exciting space to be on. So yeah, kudos to the builders.
Well, thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. And if we can all give these fine gentlemen a round of applause. Thank you.